I was kind of really into his videos, and I stumbled upon your evaluation of his, and it just seemed so interesting. It seemed like the humility that you had, and I could just see like what you were saying was true, and it kind of sounded like the way that I thought about him as well. I hadn't really bought into him all the way because I could tell he was like awakened in some way, but it seemed like his ego was still there with a lot of his actualization stuff, and I was really confused for a while. I was like, is this guy brainwashing me, or like what's going on here? So it was pretty interesting, but
Was
that's when I
he
stumbled upon your video, and I kept watching it over and over again, and I took a picture of some of your principles because I was so kind of intrigued by that.
can you
Say
hear me?
that again.
No, I heard you, but you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Perhaps there's some lag or something there. But anyway, was he your first sort of spiritual influence, or did you have some contact with some other religion or spiritual teaching before Leo Gura?
No, I'll tell you kind of a story about me, if that's all right.
Yeah.
I've been in the military. I've been in the Navy for 17 years. But before that, I kind of lived up in Spokane, Washington area, and we there was kind of like a big sort of kind of like hippie influence, and we'd go out to these barter fairs and just kind of do a lot of relaxing and stuff, and it was kind of a green zone, I guess you could say. But then I ended up kind of joining the military for 17 years, and about 2.5 years ago, I decided to go vegan, and I went vegan overnight, and it was such a big paradigm shift that I think it kind of did something to my mind. It kind of woke it up, I guess you could say. And then I started kind of questioning everything. Uh, and I read Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now.
I heard about that book, but I haven't read it myself.
Right, right. And then I kind of really just started looking deep into everything. I watched so many videos, and at this point, I've read a lot of books, like like the Book of Not Knowing by Peter Ralston. I just read that recently. Um, I've read a book called The Seeker's Guide. So probably about a dozen books I've read, and just I've spent kind of hundreds of hours studying into this. But yeah, it was just really interesting. I just, like I said, I saw I saw your video, and I was like, wow. And I knew that uh, a lot of people were telling me, even on Leo Guru's videos on actualize.org, he was saying that you should try to reach out to some of these people. And because I didn't know, really, there's hardly anybody to ever talk to about this kind of thing. But that's kind of, I know I kind of went off of the story. Is there anything else? I probably missed a whole bunch.
No, was there something special about Leo, or was it just, did he talk about things that sounded familiar from things you had read?
What was interesting, I think, with him, I think the first time I watched his material, it was before I really started waking up, and I didn't understand it at all. I was like, I don't know what this guy's really talking about. But then when I stumbled upon it again after I had kind of a lot of, I forgot to mention I started meditating and different things, and that helped me out a lot. And then I started being able to focus better, I think, and just kind of every time I'd watch one of his videos, it would lead me to another video. And I remember one time in particular, I watched his video on collective ego. And being in the military, it was really easy to see everybody, see that like the military's ego and how everybody was pushing for to make the next rank. And one day I just woke up, and it was like kind of like that one of those Matrix experiences. It felt like everybody was unconscious and just running around kind of like with chickens with their heads cut off, and I just felt so out of place. I was like, whoa, like what am I doing here? Like, and I felt like I felt like the only one on the entire Navy base that, you know, was out of place or something. And so that was quite an experience. It kind of scared me a little bit, but then I kind of got used to it. But yeah, I had several of those experiences watching Leo's videos, and that's why I was really intrigued. And they just kept coming and coming. It kind of just kept waking me up. And even though I didn't completely ever buy into everything, but I just kind of let it go and stop being scared and just kind of let his information sink in. And I must have had just dozens of kind of these waves of awakening, um, which, you know, it's just changed me so much. I had to kind of pause one time and just reflect on how much I had actually changed, because my wife was like, "You don't watch TV, you're not on Facebook anymore. Like, what's going on?" And, you know, I was like, "I don't know." But I kind of do know, but I just, yeah,
It can be difficult to put into words the exact experience.
right, right. Yeah, it's been, my biggest issues is I've been kind of trying to transcend my ego. And I've had some really bad backlash with that before. Most noticeably, like I drank a little bit too much wine. Actually, I drank a lot too much wine and too much beer. And it was like my ego took over or something. And that was kind of scary. But I definitely have, I would say my father was kind of verbally abusive. So I still have some bad stuff inside of me, you know, like my ego and stuff that seems like it wants to come out. But yeah, it's like the part of me that's trying to awaken spiritually. It's like I feel like it's pretty much taken over, and I have a good grasp of everything, and kind of a good, like, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel where I need to go, but I just haven't put it into repetition enough and, you know, practice enough. So that's kind of like where I feel like I am. I just need to really get a good, I guess, pattern going of changing my habits and stuff.
Yeah. Have you gotten into contact with this ego that you're feeling? That you say that it sort of comes out, but are you aware of it in other instances? You know, when you are not under the influence of wine or something. Have you sort of been able to contact it consciously?
Maybe just a little bit. Um, but not so much. I mean, if I get frustrated, I usually notice it right away. Uh,
Yeah.
and I can, you know, kind of start changing it right away. But sometimes it's not till after, you know, I might say something and then I realize, oh, I shouldn't have said that, and just kind of things like that. But
Because one of the best ways to transcend the ego is to integrate it. In order to, you first attempt to become aware of it, perhaps even express it, but in a kind of controlled environment, or perhaps in, well, you express yourself perhaps when you're alone or something. Try to sort of purify yourself by letting it out, and then by expressing yourself, you sort of learn to translate it, and then you sort of become more and more aware of it. And the more you become aware of it, the more it sort of calms down and sort of becomes integrated, and it becomes less likely to sort of jump out when you're not prepared.
yeah, yeah. Now, now that you mention that, so yeah, after watching some of your material, in fact, and noticing some of your principles of like non-avoidance and different things, I have started doing that a little bit. Uh, and yeah, I do know what you're talking about. Pretty much exactly what you said. I was able to notice it a lot more, because I wasn't trying to like hide it. It was just there and I could see it. Yeah. Yeah, you're that's interesting.
Um, So basically, you have this ego, which is sort of like a false self or survival strategy. Because you mentioned your father, so I assume that you have sort of. How do you think this ego of yours developed? Do you think that it is based on just did you feel that you need to suppress something or act in a certain way in order to not trigger your father or something similar to that?
I wouldn't say that so much. I think what what really wanted me to change was that I could see that, like with my wife especially, I could see that I was hurting her, and I was just I'm too judgmental and controlling was kind of that's what my father sort of was too. I think he was really controlling. He was very judgmental. Um, when I wrestled from a very young age, he was really challenging. Like always made the best wrestler. So those were it's hard to I'm not sure if it really affects me as much as I think it does or, or whatever. Uh, I feel like I can easily this email. I wasn't trying to put it, I just wasn't listening to it. It just kind of shut off for me for a while. And after work and like a couple times, one time I was noticing that I hadn't been hearing any voices or I just kind of and so that was really that was a really great experience, but then of course it slowly kind of came back in at some point and
Could you
but
go back?
I'm able to notice it.
Could you go back? There was some kind of disturbance. I couldn't hear her properly. Right before the end. You said right before it started to coming back.
Oh, I said that. Yeah, it just slowly came back, I guess, here and there, but sometimes I can just completely I feel like I for the most part I have control of it. It doesn't really control me. The only time it controls me is if usually an interaction with me and my wife or something. If the kids are, if like the kids are coming at me and my wife's upset or something like that, like a combination of things, then my ego will come back. But for the most part, if I'm by myself or on my way to work, obviously it's probably easier for people to control their ego when they're not around other people. I'm aware of that. So that's kind of where I am. It feels like if I'm alone, I can just really just be myself and uh, yeah, just be in the here and now perfectly. But it's usually I have social anxiety, so that probably doesn't help when I start getting around people and everything. Then it's easier for it to kind of sneak back in, I guess.
And how would you describe your ego? Is it this controlling aspect? You talked about being judgmental.
Yeah, it is controlling it. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned that. I always feel, it doesn't help being in the military. I'm kind of a senior person in the military, so I'm always trying to give people advice. It feels like if sometimes I catch myself subconsciously giving people advice, and I'm like, why am I even saying that? That's not even how I feel. It's kind of like my ego's just like talking, or I'm just going through this repetition, and I'll be like, why did I say that? That's not what I really want to say to him. What I really want to say is he should get out of the military and do this and that, and then I'm like, oh, well, that's weird. So it's just like, a combination of things.
And these automatic things that you say, do they sort of stem from the environment, sort of the regulations in the military, or do they come from somewhere else?
Yeah, they it's probably a combination of both. But I tend to do that with my wife too. Like I will, if she's doing something different and it doesn't seem like a very good way, I always try to control that. She'll squirt laundry or dish detergent all over the dishes, and I'm like, you should just put it in the water, and like let it dissolve into the water, because maybe I'm paranoid about getting too much soap in my mouth when I'm eating food or something. But just little things like that, I'm always trying to tweak and change the way that she does things or the way other people do things, instead of maybe sitting back and just realizing, well, that's just a different way of doing it. I kind of try to control it and help. But I think it's from a positive, well, maybe it's from a positive side. I try to make it easier on her and better, but she sees it as that I'm always trying to control and I'm judgmental, which is probably accurate.
So have you looked at my typology?
I've looked at a few things. I watched your biography. I've watched probably like 5 or 6 of your videos.
Okay, because you resemble what I call a mag or magnitudinem. With you talk about social anxiety and this judgmental controlling aspect. Usually I find that the main issue for mag types or magnitudinems are it's a very high super ego and a kind of difficulty in sort of just flowing. They seem to have a kind of difficulty in expressing their nature, their sort of inner natural drives. They think a lot of analyzing going on. So do you feel that you're sort of analyzing yourself and others and things that are going on? That it's sort of
Yeah, it's kind of,
and it might sort of interrupt with the flow or just being in the now.
yes, yeah, it
You
does
said
seem like,
you said some interesting things that you wanted to raise the awareness of society or of people.
oh no, I didn't mean that. I meant that kind of when I was like waking up and seeing everybody. Oh, you're talking about what I wrote?
Yeah,
Oh, say it again.
you said something that you wanted to help raise the consciousness or something of people in society.
Oh yeah, raise. Yeah. I thought you said erase, and I was like, I don't remember saying that. That sounds
No.
creepy. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's just I didn't mention I ran into this guy from Los Angeles here. I'm in California, and we just started talking and we hung out that night, but he was very interesting. He was really he I think he was kind of an awake individual as well. He told me that he meditates a lot, and he had been eating vegan for like 10 years, and he told me that he realized he was able to control his anger. He said he wouldn't let the like kind of like the devil tempt him, and he would feel his temperature rising, and he was able to learn how to control his anger. And it kind of felt like he was reading me a little bit when we were talking, like he just was really calm and chill. And later on, we still talk. He told me that he had a big awakening experience where he saw what would happen to him if he kept on the path he was on. um, I think he used to be a rapper or something, and he was going down the wrong road, and he kind of had like a, I guess, like a big spiritual awakening, and he started changing his life around and stuff. And he's a little bit older than me. He's like 41 or 42, and he really helped me with a lot of this stuff, and but he's busy at work a lot, so I kind of feel guilty. I feel like I'm always like, oh, like I want to get together with him and go on a hike or something, so I can really kind of get, you know, everything that I can from him. But recently I started realizing that, you know, he's more of like, he's really awakened to his feelings and stuff, but we don't really see things different, like, or we don't see things exactly the same. I think I was telling him how, you know, I felt certain ways and stuff, and it didn't seem like he had the exact same awakening. You know, it was a lot different.
Yeah, there are different sort of approaches. This, if we talk about meditations, I mean, you can think of meditation as a kind of a broad concept of various attitudinal trainings. So, for example, you can have I don't you know, there are various names for all of these things, but there is this kind of meditation practice where you let go, where you sort of express yourself. It's called sort of the negative way, where you sort of release your anger, but you do it in a sort of controlled environment, or perhaps in a piece of art, or perhaps you make a movie and you sort of act. You know, actors get to express a lot of energy, you know, and they can try on different roles, and it can be sort of healthy to sort of play around with that, even if you're not an actor, to sort of see what you can do, or how it would feel to be in a different role. And perhaps, you know, you could even role play as your own father, and sort of try to get into his shoes, how he might have felt, or perhaps play as your father when he was young, when he was a kid, and what he endured from his father. You know, I don't know if you know much about your own grandfather. You know, has there been a pattern that has been similar, or was he very different from your father, your grandfather?
Um, yeah, it's funny because I feel some of my dad and my younger son that's like 4 years old. I think my dad was really, I think he really wanted to make his dad happy, and because I think maybe that you know, maybe because by the way, my father grew up with 16 brothers and sisters, so they had a huge family. And I think my dad was closest to his father out of all the family, and uh, and so yeah, I don't know if it was a guilt trip that maybe my grandpa gave my dad. Seemed like just never, you know, he was never happy with himself. He was always trying to do more and do better. He ultimately beat his body up really bad, working and doing hard construction, and but I always caught him. I really loved his father deeply, and that's how I see my 4-year-old son. Like, my 4-year-old son would follow me off the edge of a cliff. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, so that's sort of the negative way, you can call it, or expressive way. You go with the flow. For example, you try to inquire into what you're feeling by really going deep into you, and then through that sort of have an integration where you sort of get it out so that it doesn't have to build up in your unconscious, so to speak. Then there's the positive way, or the sort of the opposite, where you sort of engage in control. And this is what most people are most familiar with when it comes to spiritual trainings, where you adopt a new habit based on the aim, and that's where you get all these sort of ascetic practices, where you sort of try to avoid expressing your negativity, and where you just focus on certain positive things, like, for example, like love, or inner peace, and things like that. So that you sort of you take this tendency of yourself to sort of repeat things, but you sort of try to create a new pattern that is more functional, more useful, more sort of controlled. And you can also sort of try switch between them and see which fits you best, and things like that. And then there's a third way that you can practice, which is where you sort of detach yourself so that you sort of get in contact with your inner knower, sort of the consciousness, the knower behind everything that's happening, both within and without. So you have your thoughts, but you have something behind your thoughts that is aware of your thoughts, and that is sort of your higher self, your sort of inner core. And I think that core is what's known as the soul. So you have this sort of very old way of dividing the mind into soul, mind, and body. And I think that that's sort of the soul is the inner knower, and then the mind is everything that is within you, sort of the thoughts and the feelings and the sort of desires. And then, of course, body is your physical body. And sometimes people will say that you're sort of spirit, soul, and body. And I'm not sure. You know, I have a specific interpretation of the word spirit. I consider it to be something like knowledge or ideas. I don't consider it to be an inherent function. But I know that some people think of spirit as perhaps the soul. You know, it's some traditions sort of switch the terms around or understand them differently. So you're sort of, you know, it's not necessarily different, but you have to sort of unpack what correlates to what in different systems. But anyway, you can sort of try to think of simply just trying to get in contact with just being this sort of observer that sort of takes in things, and so that you sort of you perhaps practice not to do anything. You don't practice neither trying to do the right thing or trying to express the dysfunctional things in order to get in contact with them, but you just sort of try to understand and become more aware by sort of detached observation of your feelings and of things that get around. So that's sort of a third way you can practice.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that inner person or whatever, that spirit. I know what you're talking about. That I kind of feel that same way. I feel like I at the core is kind of like nothingness. It's something that couldn't be touched by any cultural things. And then my mind is what's been conditioned by culture and just growing up and all of that, and then your physical body. So that's kind of, yeah, when you said that, I resonate with that. That makes the most sense to me. And then like you said, there's different parts of each of them that you kind of have to put into order. But yeah, I don't like it when you start getting into like 5 or 6 different personalities. I think those three are really, because I can feel that inside one pretty deeply. And um although it does kind of feel like nothing, like there's nothing actually there. It's just some kind of, I guess you would say, spirit, just pure presence that is conscious.
Yeah, that's the sort of the mystery, why it's called sort of mysticism and things like that.
Okay. Yeah. And I forgot to answer your question about consciousness. Well, that sort of came when I was reading Eckhart Tolle. He was talking about how he thinks in the future, like, maybe they might form, like, awakened people will kind of come together and not really start a new religion, but just kind of be like a new thing that's kind of up and coming, and maybe try to help humanity that way or something. And I was asking my friend about that in LA. I was saying, have you heard of any groups like that? And he was like, no, not really. And I was like, oh, okay. But there are different, groups and uh, different, I guess, religions that get together and things like that. But I sort of feel like I've taken little bits of each religion, and I understood the big picture of each religion, that they're just really trying to get closer to God and awakening and stuff like that. And so I don't relate with any religion at all. I just kind of understand all of them. I guess I don't like going on one side or the other. I just like kind of being in the middle of everything and just keeping open-minded with everything. But yeah, I felt like I could maybe it's just my ego. I don't know, but I do feel like a part of me would like to help, other people kind of get out of pain and suffering and raise the consciousness of everybody and stuff.
Yeah,
But
but I think
it
that's a
might.
good. I think that's a good
Okay.
feeling to have, wanting to help, because that's sort of why else would we bother with this if we don't get some sense of meaning from sort of transmitting it, sort of helping
Right.
others, so that we sort of keep it alive in a way. So
Right. Right.
especially when we can see, like you said, you saw your what's it called in the army? Your Not your colleagues, but your
Yeah, like our junior troops and stuff,
yeah,
or just
your true, how they sort of act in this sort of robotic or kind of conditioned way. And then you sort of, if you are awakened or more liberated, you sort of begin to feel that you need to do something, or perhaps because you see that it can, perhaps not at the moment, but it runs the risk of becoming a potential disaster, if it gets too conditioned and things like that.
yeah, no, that's exactly how it feels. Some of the people I work with, I just had an evaluation kind of done to me just the other day, and the senior chief that was doing it, he's so focused on he has to have everything right. He's like, what do I know that I need to tell everybody? And it's all about communication, and it's like he's taken in everything from everybody. And I really feel bad for him. And he's a really nice guy, and he's really you can tell in his heart he's a really pure guy, but he gets stressed out. Everybody's telling him he has to have get everything done by this certain time, and he's always everything's just crunch time, and you have to communicate effectively, and I can see that suffering in him. And it's a lot like that with a lot of people. Their main goal in life is to make it as far as they can in the military, and not that that's bad, but they just yeah, that's their goal, and I can feel that. And it hurts a little bit just seeing all of that stuff, but uh
Yeah, you sort of get more you get more in touch with your sort of conscience.
yes.
The more you are aware, the more you sort of feel with how people suffer and things like that.
Right, right. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I've never felt like this before in my life. Just recently I've been doing a lot of affirmations about acceptance, like accepting myself, because that was something I could not do. I couldn't accept myself. I kept telling myself I need to get all these additional licenses in the military, and I should be doing everything else that the people I work with are doing. And it was just so much stress that I finally just started telling myself, just accept myself where I am right now, just accept. And I just kept doing that over and over again. And I kind of had like an awakening experience just from doing that. And I had it for like a whole day. I just was accepting myself, and then it kind of fell away, and I was like, no, like come back. And but yeah, I've been doing some affirmations at night to help me with that, to just try to like accept myself where I am right now and just be happy in the moment.
Well,
That
it
was one.
sounds like you're doing pretty well. Just to sort of keep practice, and it sort of lasts longer and longer. And these all these sort of trainings.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I feel like I'm on the right track.
and did you get that from Leo Gura, or who did you get this idea of accepting yourself from?
Actually, it was that video you guys did of when you were rating Leo.
Ah,
You played that part of. I watched that video probably like a dozen times just because I was trying to get everything out of it. Um, and yeah, when he was saying that, because you were judging him on why is he just parroting about it, and I was like, oh, okay, like that makes sense. So I realized that the way he was saying that was actually correct. And so I was like, okay, I just need to accept myself. I was stuck in that. I didn't know what I needed to do. I was like, do I need to become like just like a really nice, caring person and just be I thought like a fairy tale, you know, like no matter what happens, I'm supposed to be completely calm about everything and be like, you know, just like and then I started realizing that I'm not at that stage yet, and I need to do something. There's something in between, kind of like you're saying, just kind of letting it flow out of you, but in a controlled way, and just kind of observing it. Um, so that's kind of where I'm at now. But yeah,
Yeah.
I was just kind of lost. I was like, I'm way off if that's the case, because I still get angry and
Yeah, things like this are fine. You don't have to judge yourself from being angry and things like that, but just sort of just try to become aware of it and start to think sort of, well, okay, that's interesting. I'm angry, sort of, so that you get more and more familiar with how these things show up. And then, of course,
right,
you have to sort of there's this first comes understanding, and then you have to sort of practice your will. And your will is sort of practice will is practice not expressing negative emotions. But a lot of that is also based on your understanding. The more you understand about yourself and you understand about other people, the more easier it is to prevent negative emotions that leads to negative expressions. Because often all of these things are linked with your thoughts and with your values. And so if something comes in that sort of is against your values, that leads to negative emotions, and then that also tends to lead to negative reactions. So for example, if you have things like honor cultures, then people have these ideas that you need to show respect for this prophet, for example, and then someone comes in and is disrespectful, then you immediately feel negative emotions, and then you get sort of like these terrorists who do violent acts. But it all starts from that, from those thoughts, from those values. You know, you change those values, you change the knowledge or way of seeing things, and there's a different chain reaction where you don't get those negative emotions.
yes, yeah, yeah. I just started really. I think I just kind of started breaking into what you're saying there of being able to notice all of that stuff. It just happened recently within the last probably 6 months. I've been able to start tapping into that area. Um, but even now and then, something that I wanted to mention would be like my wife would say like, yeah, you know, you're supposed to be this spiritual guru, but you're getting mad at me and you're being rude. And she would say stuff like that. And it would just like break my heart, you know, on the inside. I was like, I've put like so many hours of work into this. And then she would make me feel that way. But then
But
recently I just started realizing that
but
it's
that's
just,
a good
yeah,
opportunity for training. When she says that, that's a good opportunity because then you start to remember sort of, and you sort of you get something to focus on, and you sort of can sort of prepare yourself so that you don't think too much that you need to be this perfect calm person, that you can sort of allow yourself to sort of express yourself freely. But one thing that I find very useful when it comes to improving your reactions, your negative reactions, is to remember this concept that I refer to as freeless man, which is sort of this idea that people aren't really free. Because often negative emotions comes from this expectation that you think that people should be able to do even very simple things, but it isn't really that. That's not really the case because people are sort of deterministic. They sort of just everything sort of just happens, and part of spiritual training is to be able to actually escape this deterministic tendency. We can call it conditioning, or but it's more than just conditioning because a lot of things that you sort of that comes from within you are also sort of automatic. And if you sort of remember that, if you sort of focus on that, you sort of can train yourself from, you're more prepared when those negative emotions shows up. And at least my experience has been that those negative emotions still show up, but they seem to sort of evaporate more quickly if I sort of remember that. So if someone sort of annoys me and I feel myself getting angry, I sort of remember that, this people is not really responsible for their actions. I mean, this is just what happens. And then I sort of calm down very quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
So that is also
Yeah, that's right.
that's also tied to knowledge. So it always begins there at knowledge and how you choose to look at the world.
Yeah, I understand.
You froze up.
Right, right. Yeah, that's why I'm so interested in speaking with. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but it's lagging or
Can you hear
there's.
me now? Can you
Yeah,
hear me
yeah,
now?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was saying that's why I was so interested after watching your videos. It seemed like that was the missing link, was that I wasn't letting my real emotions out. I was just holding everything back. I wasn't just doing the non-avoidance. I just was yeah, just trying to think of a way to put it. But as soon as I started kind of tapping into some of the stuff you were talking about, I could see right then and there that was it. It made me feel better. It made me feel more comfortable. Um, and I started growing real quick from that. So I was like, I knew something was good about that.
That's great to hear. I have been wondering, if
Yeah,
I've been having some kind of impact, or so it's good to know that I am able to help.
yeah, yeah. It was cool. I liked the end of your video and stuff, and it was kind of like just kind of was like motivate. It was motivating because you weren't tearing into them mean. You just had humility, and you just the way you talked about it, and I was like, wow, that's how I want to be able to rate somebody. But yeah, I do have to get going soon, but I'm very thankful for you being able to do this with me. I was always thinking that, soon you might be so busy that you won't be able to do these kind of things. So uh, I was like, I better take the opportunity.
Uh, that's possible. I don't know, but yeah, I'm glad to be able to get the opportunity to talk directly. It's much more
Yeah, definitely.
efficient. I think it's hard to talk through text, and also just making videos. I have to sort of try to keep in mind what how I should come across so that people understand me. But it's much easier if you can have sort of more of a back and forth.
Right, right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's what I kind of take away from this is just kind of allow some of my emotions to continue to be there, and but still, just by doing that, I noticed already that I was able to control them a little bit better and understand where they're coming from, just because I was allowing them to be instead of trying to like suppress them. um
So do you mind if I put this video conversation up on the channel?
oh no, I don't mind at all. Hopefully it's clear enough. I know it kind
Uh,
of seemed fuzzy. I thought my Wi-Fi was a little better.
perhaps I will cut it a bit. I don't know. We'll see.
Right. Okay, awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Um, is there
Nice.
anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, perhaps if there's something else that comes up that you want to know about, we can perhaps talk again. But
Okay,
I
very
think it's
good.
good now.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm in a good spot too. I'm just happy for your videos. If I wouldn't have found that, I might have been stuck for quite a while longer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad because Leo Gura, he has a lot of following, so you know he could have really done some good work if he had you know practiced more, or you know he started too early before he himself had really developed and understood all of these teachings.
Yeah, yeah. That's it's really interesting that you mentioned that because I feel like he does see things. I think he's read a lot more than me, and I think he understands a lot more. But yeah, I think like you said, he kind of takes things to the extremes, and I think he's just kind of like you said, just kind of he tricks himself, and he's got money invested into it and stuff. So that's probably not helping him out so much. But I feel like he is. I think he might be catching on to some of his own stuff a little bit more because I do watch a lot of his videos. But yeah, I think he still is just a little bit confused on certain things. But I am too.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you know, that's one of the perhaps the most difficult part of this journey is to find the right information, you know. Who can you sort of rely on? And so you always have to have sort of your wits about you and sort of develop this sort of internal compass where you sort of get more and more familiar and you know more and more what is right and what is wrong, and who seems to be speaking truth and who is sort of slightly off course or perhaps a lot off course.
Yeah, I've felt that inner compass. I have something like that. I I can really tell when somebody's speaking the truth, and that's helped me out a lot. The funny thing is I think my anxiety helps me because I would just keep searching and searching and searching on the internet, and my wife was just like, "What's wrong with you? You know, are you obsessive compulsive?" And I just would be like, "Well, I'm just kind of going through all the getting rid of all the junk and finding the kernels of truth and everything, you know." And I just was kind of putting it all together. Um, do you dabble in that spiral dynamic stuff? Do you know that?
No, I have been thinking of making sort of some video about that or something related to that. I read up about his. I don't know if this is spiral dynamics, but it's related to Ken Wilber's integral theory. He has also sort of also levels, and I noticed that there was a close correlation with my own levels. But I also noticed some small differences, so I was thinking of perhaps making a video comparing them or something like that. But you know,
Yeah,
I don't know. I think that they are sort of okay. You know, I don't really take my own levels all that seriously. You know, even in these evaluations, it was mainly a way to try and attract attention because
yeah, yeah.
I'm kind of unsure. You know, if you can really play someone precisely on these levels. You know, so it was more like a kind of fun thing.
Yeah, yeah. I had that sense about that. Yeah, it is interesting because I find myself in like stage green a little bit and then stage yellow and then recently like some turquoise. So it's kind of like you can see it, you know, but it's kind
Uh,
of just like Leo even says it's kind of a messy thing. So
yeah,
yeah, well, thank you again. Thank you for taking the time and yeah,
yeah.
I just I do feel like I'm the one thing I always try to do is I always like it's like my ego is trying to hear somebody tell me like, you know, a positive thing like, "Oh, okay." Like, you know, I like do you feel like if I continue what I'm doing and just take everything slow and kind of learn, I'm on a pretty good track, do you think?
Yeah,
Or
I think you appear very sincere and pretty developed, as far as I can see. So just
okay.
don't kick yourself too hard, you know. I think
Yeah.
you're doing progress.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, I do kick myself. That's why I'm trying to do the self-acceptance stuff. Awesome. Well, thank you for all the videos you do. And yeah, it'd be great to do this again, maybe in a few weeks or something, or whenever you got time. I can probably set it up to have a lot better Wi-Fi signal, and that might be a better video or something.
Yeah, I'll shut off the recording first. Just hang on.